I still remember the exact moment when everything shattered. It was a Thursday evening in November, the kind of night when the cold seeps through your bones and makes you desperate for warmth, for family, for home. I had been working double shifts at the diner and stocking shelves at the grocery store, trying to keep Lily and me afloat in our tiny apartment. The babysitter had canceled at the last minute, texting me just as I was about to start my evening shift. My daughter was running a fever, nothing serious, but enough that I couldn't leave her alone. At 4 years old, she needed someone to watch over her, to hold her when she cried, to check her temperature. I had no choice but to turn to the people who were supposed to love us unconditionally. My parents lived in a beautiful colonial house on Maple Street, the kind of house that screamed success and respectability. I pulled up in my beat-up Honda Lily, bundled in her little teddy bear jacket, her cheeks flushed with fever. She looked so small, so fragile. My hands were shaking as I knocked on the door, already rehearsing the apology I would have to make for disturbing them. I hated that I had been reduced to this, to begging for scraps of their attention, but I had nowhere else to turn. My mother opened the door, and the look on her face made my stomach drop. It was not concern or warmth. It was cold annoyance, the kind of look you would give a door-to-door salesman interrupting your dinner. She glanced down at Lily, who was clinging to my leg, and I saw her mouth tighten into a thin line. "It's the girl again," she said, not even using Lily's name. "Don't you have anyone else to impose on? We're done raising children, Sarah. We've done our time." I felt my throat close up, but I forced myself to speak. "Mom, please. The babysitter canceled and Lily has a slight fever. I just need a few hours. I'll be back as soon as my shift ends." I was already stepping inside, hoping that once they saw how sick Lily was, their parental instincts would kick in. But my father's voice stopped me cold. He was sitting in his leather recliner, the one they had just bought last month, watching some news program with the volume turned up too loud. He didn't even turn his head to look at me. "We have important plans tonight, Sarah. The child will ruin everything. Can't you figure out your own life for once?" I stood there in the doorway, feeling the November wind cut through my thin work uniform, feeling Lily shiver against me. I wanted to scream, to demand how they could be so heartless to their own granddaughter, but I had learned long ago that fighting with them only made things worse. So I swallowed my pride, my anger, my hurt, and I begged. "Please, just a few hours. She'll be quiet. She'll sleep most of the time, I promise." That was when Jessica arrived. My younger sister, dressed in a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her husband David right behind her in his expensive suit. Jessica had always been the golden child, the one who married well, the one who brought home a man with political ambitions and family money. She looked at me standing there with my sick daughter, and I saw that familiar smirk cross her face. "Oh, look, there she is, turning Mom and Dad's house into a daycare again." She brushed past me, enveloping our parents in an exaggerated hug, completely ignoring Lily's small hand reaching out toward her. "David has arranged the most wonderful dinner for all of us tonight. Isn't that sweet?" I watched as my parents' faces transformed, lighting up with genuine affection for Jessica and David. It was like watching a mask slip on the warmth they had never shown me, suddenly abundant for my sister. My father finally stood up, actually putting his arm around David's shoulders. "That sounds wonderful, son. We've been looking forward to it all week." My mother reluctantly turned back to me, her expression hardening again. "Fine, leave the girl, but she needs to be absolutely silent. And do not let her touch the new leather furniture. We just had it delivered, and children are so destructive." I should have picked Lily up right then and walked out. I should have called in sick, held my baby girl close, and never looked back. But I was exhausted, broke, and desperate. The rent was due in 3 days, and I was still $200 short. So I knelt down, kissed Lily's hot forehead, and whispered, "Mommy will be back soon, sweetheart. Be a good girl for Grandma and Grandpa, okay?" Her little arms wrapped around my neck, and I felt her tears dampen my collar. "Mama, don't go, I don't feel good." My heart was breaking, but I gently pried her arms away. "I have to, baby, but I'll be back before you know it." I stood up, looked at my mother one last time, hoping to see some softness, some humanity. There was nothing. I left my daughter there in that cold house with those cold people and drove to the diner with tears streaming down my face. The evening shift was brutal. I spilled coffee on a customer, mixed up 2 orders, and could barely focus on anything except the image of Lily's tear-stained face. Around 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text message from my mother. My hands were trembling so badly I almost dropped the phone as I read the words. "The child is crying too much. We left her outside. Can't stand it anymore. Good luck with your shift." Time stopped. The diner noise faded to a distant hum. I read the message again, certain I had misunderstood. Left her outside, my 4-year-old daughter sick with fever. Left outside in the November cold. I called my mother's number immediately. It rang and rang, no answer. I called my father, nothing. Jessica, voicemail. I tried again and again, my panic rising with each unanswered ring. I did not ask permission, I did not explain. I just ripped off my apron, grabbed my keys, and ran out of the diner, ignoring my manager's shouts behind me. The drive to my parents' house was a blur of tears and terror. My mind was racing with horrible images of Lily alone, in the dark cold and scared, calling for me. I was shaking so hard I could barely grip the steering wheel, and I heard myself making sounds I had never made before, animal sounds of pure fear. That was when I saw it. My parents' Mercedes parked outside Giovanni's, the most expensive Italian restaurant in town. I slammed on my brakes and stared through the large glass windows. There they were, all 4 of them, my parents, Jessica and David, sitting at a beautifully set table with wine glasses raised in a toast. They were laughing, actually laughing. My mother had her head thrown back in delight at something David had said. My father was smiling broadly, more animated than I had seen him in years. Jessica was glowing, basking in their attention and approval. Something inside me snapped. I got out of my car and walked straight to the window, my work shoes slapping against the wet pavement. I stood there just inches from the glass, and I slammed my palm against it, hard. The sound made them all turn, their smiles freezing on their faces. I pointed at them, my fingers shaking with rage, tears streaming down my face. I wanted to say something, to scream at them, but no words came. I just stared, letting them see the devastation they had caused, and then I turned and ran back to my car. My parents' house was dark when I pulled up. Every window was black, like nobody lived there at all. I jumped out of the car and started searching, calling Lily's name into the cold night air. The front yard, the backyard, behind the garage. "Lily baby, where are you?" My voice was hoarse, desperate. Then I heard it. A small whimper coming from behind the house near the trash bins. I ran, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would burst, and there she was. My baby girl, curled up between 2 garbage cans, her teddy bear jacket soaked through from sitting on the wet ground, her little body shaking with cold and fear. Her face was streaked with tears and snot, her eyes red and swollen. "Mama," she whispered, her voice so small and broken. I was so scared. I called and called, but nobody came. "It's cold, Mama, and it smells bad here." I scooped her up, pressing her against my chest, feeling how cold her skin was. She was burning with fever, but shivering violently, and I could feel her little heart racing against mine. "I'm here now, baby. Mama's got you. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I carried her to the car, wrapped her in my jacket, turned the heat on full blast. She fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from crying. But I did not drive home, not yet. I sat there in the dark, parked in front of that perfect house, with its perfect lawn and perfect facade, and I made a decision. I looked at my daughter's tear-stained face, at the way she twitched in her sleep, probably having nightmares, and I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest, where my heart used to be. They had broken something in me tonight, but they had also freed something. I was done begging for their love, done apologizing for existing, done hoping they would change. I drove Lily to the emergency room, where they treated her for mild hypothermia and gave her antibiotics for the infection that her fever had masked. The doctor asked if everything was okay at home, his eyes lingering on her wet clothes and the way she flinched when anyone came too close. I told him everything. He documented it all, took photos, had a social worker come talk to me. They gave me copies of all the medical records, including the notes about Lily's psychological state, how she kept asking if Grandma was going to leave her outside again. Over the next few days, my phone would not stop ringing. My mother, my father, Jessica. All of them calling, leaving messages that ranged from defensive to angry to accusatory. "How dare you take her to the hospital and make us look bad? You're overreacting as always. That child was manipulating you. She was fine." I did not answer. I just kept adding their messages to the file I was building, the file I called The Truth. I recorded everything, every cruel text message, every voicemail where they blamed me for their own actions, every time they chose Jessica over me, money over family appearances, over actual love. I had been their verbal punching bag for so long that I had mountains of evidence. I just had never thought to use it before. 3 weeks after that night, Jessica came to my apartment. She showed up unannounced, knocking on my door with that practiced smile she wore like armor. I almost did not answer, but Lily was at preschool, and I knew this confrontation was inevitable. I opened the door but did not invite her in. "Sarah," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We need to talk. You know Mom and Dad only meant well. They were just overwhelmed that night. You're being so sensitive about this. They love you, they love Lily. You're just too emotional to see it clearly." She paused and her smile hardened just a fraction. "Besides, David is in the middle of his campaign for city council. We can't have any family drama right now. It would look bad, you understand, don't you?" I stared at my sister, really looked at her, and I saw her clearly for the first time in my life. She was not the successful, put-together woman I had always envied. She was empty, a beautiful shell with nothing inside but ambition and selfishness. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice calm and cold. "You want me to forget that our parents left their 4-year-old granddaughter outside in the cold while she was sick because it might hurt your husband's campaign?" Jessica's smile never wavered. "Don't be so dramatic. She was fine, wasn't she? Children are resilient. And anyway, you shouldn't have left her there if you were so worried. This is kind of on you for not having your life together." Something in her tone, that casual dismissal of my daughter's suffering, made my vision go red. "Their love," I said, my voice rising. "You call leaving a sick child by the garbage love, or is love only for the daughter who brings home money and status? Is that the kind of love that counts in this family?" Jessica's mask finally cracked, and I saw anger flash in her eyes. "Don't you dare judge me. At least I made something of myself. At least I didn't get knocked up and abandoned. At least I give them something to be proud of." I stepped forward and Jessica actually took a step back. "Good, let her be afraid." "Get out," I said quietly. "Get out of my home and don't ever come back. You and your perfect husband and your perfect life have no place here. We don't need you. We don't need any of you." "You'll regret this," Jessica hissed, her composure completely gone now. "I'll tell them what you said. They'll never forgive you for this." "I'm counting on it," I said, and I closed the door in her face. After that, I started planning. I was not going to just walk away and let them forget what they had done. They needed to face consequences, real ones. I started doing research, digging into David's campaign, his public image, the narrative he was building about being a family man with strong values. I found out he was planning a major campaign event at the Riverside Hotel, a gala, where he would introduce his family to major donors and the press. It was going to be the centerpiece of his family values platform. I had contacts in the events industry from my years of working multiple jobs. I knew people who knew people. I made some calls, pulled in some favors, and managed to get myself added to the volunteer coordination team for the event. Not in any official capacity, just helping with setup and logistics. Nobody questioned it. I was just another face in the background, invisible like I had always been to them. But I was not invisible. I was gathering information, watching, planning. I saw how they had choreographed every moment of the event, including a segment called "The Family Behind the Candidate," where David would introduce Jessica and my parents to the crowd, talking about their support and their values. It was going to be a beautiful piece of theater, all lies and pretty words. I had compiled everything by then. All the text messages, the voicemails, the hospital records. Lily's medical reports detailing the hypothermia and psychological trauma. I had even included drawings Lily had made in her therapy sessions, pictures of a little girl standing alone in the dark next to big scary shapes. The therapist said it was how she processed what happened to her. I made copies of everything, organized it all into a comprehensive file with dates, timestamps, and context. I also reached out to Marcus Chen, an investigative journalist with the local paper, who had a reputation for exposing hypocrisy in political campaigns. I sent him an anonymous package with copies of everything, along with a note explaining that the family values candidate had a family that left children outside in the cold. I did not know if he would use it, but I planted the seed. The night of the gala arrived. The Riverside Hotel was decorated beautifully, all soft lighting and elegant draping. I wore a simple black dress, nothing fancy, and I stayed in the background helping arrange chairs, checking that the audiovisual equipment was working. My parents arrived in their finest clothes, my mother in a designer gown, my father in a tuxedo. Jessica was radiant in a red dress that probably cost more than my car. David was in his element, shaking hands, kissing babies, playing the role of the perfect candidate. I watched them from the shadows. They had no idea I was there. Why would they? I was nobody to them, just an inconvenient daughter who had finally learned her place. They took their seats in the front row, right where they were supposed to be, and the event began. David's speech was polished and practiced. He talked about integrity, about family, about the values that made our community strong. He talked about the importance of taking care of the vulnerable, of protecting children, of building a society where everyone was valued. The crowd loved it. They applauded at all the right moments, nodded along with his points. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. And now, David said, his smile bright and confident, I want to introduce you to the people who made me who I am. The family that taught me everything I know about love, sacrifice, and dedication. He gestured to the front row. My beautiful wife, Jessica, and her wonderful parents, Robert and Margaret Thompson. They stood up, waving to the crowd, basking in the attention. The applause was thunderous. David stepped down from the podium to embrace them, and a photographer captured the moment, the perfect family united in their perfect values. That was when the volunteer coordinator, a young woman named Amy, who had no idea what was in the envelope, approached the podium with a large white envelope. She had been instructed to deliver special messages from supporters. At this exact moment, a bit of campaign theater to make David seem more connected to regular people. She handed David the envelope with a smile, and he opened it on stage expecting to find congratulatory notes or maybe some checks. His smile faltered as he pulled out the first paper. It was a printout of the text message my mother had sent. The child is crying too much. We left her outside. Can't stand it anymore. Good luck with your shift. David's face went pale. He quickly tried to shove the paper back into the envelope, but Jessica, sensing something was wrong, snatched it from him. I watched her face drain of color as she read it. She looked out into the crowd, scanning, and her eyes finally found me standing in the back. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then she turned to my parents, showed them the paper. I saw my mother's hand fly to her mouth. My father stood up furious, looking around like he could identify who had done this. But that was just the beginning. The next paper David pulled out was worse. It was a child's drawing done in crayon, showing a small figure huddled between two large rectangles labeled trash. At the top, in Lily's careful, crooked handwriting, were the words, "Grandma left me here." I was so scared. I called for Mommy, but she didn't come. The crowd had gone silent. People were whispering, pulling out their phones. David tried to laugh it off, to explain it away, but his voice was shaking. This is clearly some kind of misunderstanding, some prank. That was when Marcus Chen stood up from his seat in the middle of the ballroom. He had his press credentials around his neck and a camera crew with him. "Mr. Harrison," he called out, his voice cutting through the confusion. "Can you explain these text messages and medical records that show your wife's family left a 4-year-old child outside in freezing temperatures while they dined at an expensive restaurant?" The ballroom erupted. Cameras flashed. People started shouting questions. Security moved toward Marcus, but he was already broadcasting on his phone, streaming live to his newspaper's website. Jessica was frantically trying to grab all the papers from David, but they scattered, falling to the stage floor, where other people could see them. I walked forward slowly, weaving through the crowd until I reached the front. Marcus saw me and held out his microphone. I did not take it. Instead, I reached into my purse and pulled out a manila folder, handing it directly to him. "This is everything," I said clearly, making sure the cameras caught it. "Medical records, police reports, therapy notes. Everything you need to verify the story." I turned to face my parents, Jessica and David. They were all staring at me with expressions ranging from shock to fury to betrayal. "You did this to yourselves," I said loud enough for the microphones to pick up. "You chose status over family. You chose appearances over love. You left a child in the cold because she was inconvenient. And now everyone knows exactly what kind of people you really are." My mother tried to speak, her voice trembling. "Sarah, you don't understand. We were just—" "Save it," I interrupted. "I'm not interested in your excuses anymore." I walked out of that ballroom with my head held high, leaving chaos in my wake. Behind me, I could hear David trying to salvage his speech, Jessica's voice rising in protest. My father's angry shouts. I did not look back. I got in my car, drove to the preschool to pick up Lily early, and took her out for ice cream. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. By morning, the story was everywhere. Local news, social media, even a few national outlets picked it up. The image of that child's drawing with those heartbreaking words went viral. People were outraged. David's campaign tried to do damage control, releasing statements about family disagreements being taken out of context. But nobody was buying it. The evidence was too clear, too documented, too damning. Within a week, David withdrew from the race. He made a statement about needing to focus on family matters. But everyone knew the truth. His political career was over before it had really begun. My father lost his consulting position with David's campaign, and without that connection, several of his other clients quietly dropped him. My mother was removed from her positions on various charity boards and church committees. People did not want to be associated with someone who could treat a child that way. Jessica's marriage started crumbling almost immediately. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she and David were fighting constantly, each blaming the other for the disaster. She had lost her golden ticket, and David had lost his political dreams. They were stuck with each other and their bitterness. My phone would not stop ringing for weeks. They all called, leaving increasingly desperate messages. My father's voice went from angry to pleading. "Sarah, you've destroyed us, your own family. How could you do this? We need to talk about how to fix this." My mother tried guilt. "We raised you better than this, to air family business in public, to humiliate us like this. I don't even know who you are anymore." Jessica tried threats. "You're going to pay for this. We'll make sure everyone knows how unstable you are, how you manipulated everything." I listened to every message once, just to make sure there was nothing that required immediate action, and then I deleted them. I blocked their numbers, I blocked them on social media. I changed Lily's preschool and made sure the new one knew that my parents were not authorized to pick her up under any circumstances. I built walls around us, strong ones, the kind that should have been there all along. 2 months after the gala disaster, they showed up at my apartment, all 3 of them looking older and more haggard than I had ever seen them. My father's face was gaunt, and there were dark circles under my mother's eyes. Jessica looked like she had aged 5 years, her expensive clothes somehow sitting wrong on her frame. I opened the door but did not step aside. "What do you want?" My mother spoke first, her voice wavering. "We came to apologize, to try to make things right. We've had time to think, and we realize we made mistakes." "Mistakes," I repeated flatly. "Is that what you're calling it? Leaving a sick 4-year-old outside in the cold is a mistake, like forgetting to pick up milk from the store." My father cleared his throat. "Now, Sarah, let's not be overdramatic. We've all suffered enough. Your actions have cost us dearly. I've lost clients. Your mother has been ostracized. Jessica's marriage is on the rocks. Don't you think we've been punished enough?" I almost laughed at the absurdity. "Punished? You think facing the consequences of your own actions is punishment? You think finally being held accountable for your cruelty is unfair?" Jessica pushed forward. "We were going through a stressful time. David's campaign, the pressure, everything. We just needed one night to relax and enjoy ourselves. Was that really so wrong? You could have found someone else to watch Lily. You could have called in sick. But instead you made it our problem and then destroyed us when we couldn't handle it perfectly." The way she said it, the way she twisted reality to make herself the victim, made me realize that nothing had changed. They were not here to apologize. They were here to make me fix the mess they believed I had created. "You know what the really sad thing is," I said quietly. "You still don't get it. You're not sorry for what you did to Lily. You're not sorry for the decades of making me feel worthless. You're only sorry that you got caught. You're sorry that your actions finally had consequences." My mother reached out like she was going to touch my arm, and I stepped back. "Please, Sarah, we're family. Family forgives each other. Family moves past these things." "Family," I said, and I felt tears prickling at my eyes, but I blinked them back. "You want to talk about family? Real families protect each other. Real families show up when times are hard. Real families don't leave children by the trash and then go out to celebrate. You chose your version of family a long time ago, the one where appearances matter more than people, where money matters more than love, where Jessica's success matters more than my existence. And I finally chose mine too. So that's it." My father's voice rose angry now. "You're going to cut us off after everything we did for you. We raised you, put a roof over your head, paid for your education. You did the bare minimum that parents are supposed to do, and you've been holding it over my head my entire life." I shot back. "I owe you nothing, but I owe Lily everything. I owe her a life where she knows she's valued, where she never has to beg for crumbs of affection, where she never has to wonder if she's good enough. And that life doesn't include you." I watched their faces harden, the brief mask of remorse falling away to reveal the same cold indifference I had known my whole life. Jessica's eyes narrowed. "You're going to regret this. When you're struggling alone, when you need help, when that kid of yours becomes a burden you can't handle, don't come crying to us." "I won't," I said simply. I'd rather struggle alone than beg for scraps from people who don't know what love means. I closed the door on them, locked it, and pressed my back against it. I could hear them on the other side arguing in hushed, angry voices about whose fault it was, about how ungrateful I was, about how they had wasted their time coming here. Then I heard their footsteps, retreating car doors slamming, the engine starting and fading away. Lily came out of her bedroom then, where she had been playing with her dolls. Mama, who was at the door. Nobody important, sweetheart, I said, and I realized it was true. Just some people from the past. She climbed into my lap, and we sat there on the floor together. She was healthy now, happy, secure in the knowledge that I would always protect her. The nightmares about being left outside had finally stopped. Her therapist said she was making remarkable progress, learning to trust again. Mama, she said, playing with the ends of my hair. I'm glad it's just us. Me too, baby, I whispered into her hair. Me too. 3 months later, I got a new job with better pay and benefits, working for a nonprofit that helps single parents. The irony was not lost on me. I was good at it, understanding the struggles of the people I was helping in a way that nobody else on staff could. Lily thrived in her new preschool, making friends, bringing home artwork that covered every inch of our small refrigerator. We built a life, just the two of us, surrounded by people who actually cared. I made friends with other single moms at the preschool, and we helped each other out with childcare, meals, emotional support. I found a community that felt more like family than my actual family ever had. On Lily's 5th birthday, we had a small party at the park, and it was filled with people who loved her, who celebrated her, who showed up because they wanted to, not because they felt obligated. I took a photo that day of Lily blowing out her candles, surrounded by friends, her face lit up with pure joy. That night, after she was asleep, I looked at that photo and thought about all the years I had spent trying to earn my parents' love, trying to be good enough for them, trying to make them see me. I had wasted so much time on people who would never value me. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me check. It was Jessica. Mom is in the hospital. Heart attack. Thought you should know. No request for me to come. No attempt at reconciliation. Just a cold fact delivered like she was checking off a box on a list. I stared at the message for a long time, waiting for the guilt to come, waiting to feel like a terrible daughter for not immediately rushing to the hospital. But I felt nothing, just a distant sort of sadness for what could have been for the family I had always wanted, but never had. I deleted the message and put my phone away. Lily needed me to be strong, needed me to be present, needed me to show her what unconditional love looked like. I could not do that while still trying to fix people who did not want to be fixed, while still hoping for change from people who had shown me exactly who they were over and over again. I went into her room and watched her sleep, her little chest rising and falling peacefully. She was everything to me. She was my family, my purpose, my reason for finally finding the courage to walk away from people who only knew how to take. I kissed her forehead gently, careful not to wake her. You'll never have to doubt my love, I whispered in the darkness. You'll never have to wonder if you're enough. Because you are everything, baby girl. You are everything. I closed her door softly and went to sit by the window looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, my parents and Jessica were living with the consequences of their choices. They had lost their reputation, their social standing, their perfect facade. They had lost me and Lily. But I had a feeling they were more upset about the first losses than the last. And that was okay, because I had finally learned the most important lesson of my life. Real family is not about blood or obligation. It is about showing up, about choosing to love, even when it is hard, about protecting the people who matter most. Jessica and my parents had never been my family in any way that mattered. They had been strangers wearing familiar faces, people who shared my history but not my values. I thought about that night by the trash cans, about finding Lily cold and scared and alone, and I knew I had made the right choice. Every single choice I had made since then had been right. Walking away was not cruel. Staying would have been. The sun was starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. A new day, a new beginning. I had spent so many years in the dark. But now I was finally stepping into the light. And I was not alone. I had Lily, I had my community, and most importantly, I had myself. I had learned to value myself, to set boundaries, to demand the respect and love I deserved. My phone buzzed again, another message from Jessica. You're heartless. I hope you can live with yourself. I smiled and blocked the number. I could live with myself just fine. Better than fine, actually. For the first time in my life, I was free. Lily's voice called out from her bedroom. Mama, can we have pancakes for breakfast? Of course, baby, I called back. Whatever you want. I heard her little feet padding across the floor, and then she appeared in the doorway. Her hair messy from sleep, her favorite stuffed bunny tucked under her arm. She ran to me, and I caught her up in my arms, spinning her around until she giggled. This was my family, this perfect, beautiful, small family that I had fought so hard to protect. And I would never let anyone hurt us again. The past was behind me now, full of people who never learned how to truly love. But the future was wide open, full of possibility, full of hope. We made pancakes together, Lily standing on a stool to help me mix the batter, getting flour all over both of us. We laughed and talked about her upcoming field trip to the zoo. We planned our day, our week, our life. And nowhere in those plans was there room for people who saw us as burdens instead of blessings. I had finally learned that the greatest act of love was not in forgiving those who hurt you. It was in protecting yourself and the people you love from further harm. It was in choosing peace over chaos, health over toxicity, truth over comfortable lies. And I had made that choice. Every single day, I kept making that choice. The doorbell rang, and for a moment my heart clenched, wondering if it was them again. But it was just my neighbor dropping off some toys her kids had outgrown that she thought Lily might enjoy. We chatted for a few minutes about the upcoming block party, about her daughter's upcoming dance recital that Lily was excited to attend. Normal, kind, genuine interactions with people who cared. After she left, I closed the door and looked around my small apartment. It was not much, not compared to my parents' house or Jessica's suburban palace, but it was ours, filled with love and laughter and safety. The photos on the wall were all of happy moments, Lily's artwork quotes about strength and resilience that I had printed out during the hardest days. One quote in particular caught my eye, something I had found when I was at my lowest point right after that terrible night. You survived what you thought would destroy you. Now straighten your crown and move forward like the queen you are. I had survived. More than that, I had thrived. I had taken the worst moment of my life and transformed it into the catalyst for change. I had stopped waiting for people who would never choose me and started choosing myself. 6 months after the gala, I was sitting in a coffee shop during my lunch break when I saw the headline on someone's discarded newspaper. Former council candidate David Harrison files for divorce. I read the article quickly, learning that Jessica and David's marriage had finally imploded under the weight of blame and resentment. Neither of them could forgive the other for the public humiliation, for the destroyed dreams, for the loss of everything they had worked toward. I waited for the satisfaction to come, for the vindictive pleasure of seeing them suffer. But all I felt was a distant, hollow sadness. They had destroyed themselves. I had simply held up a mirror and forced them to see their own reflection. The cruelty had always been there. I had just made sure it could not stay hidden anymore. A woman at the next table was arguing with someone on the phone, her voice rising. I don't care what Mom says, I'm not going to her birthday party if she's going to treat me like garbage the whole time. I'm done pretending everything is fine. I saw the fear and determination in her face, the same emotions I had felt when I had finally decided enough was enough. I wanted to go over to her to tell her that it gets easier, that choosing yourself is the hardest and best decision she'll ever make. But I stayed in my seat, giving her the space to fight her own battle. Everyone's journey was different. Mine had involved public exposure and dramatic revenge, because that was what the situation called for. Hers might be quieter, more personal. The important thing was that she was standing up for herself. I finished my coffee and headed back to work, where I had 3 families to meet with that afternoon. Each of them struggling, each of them trying to build better lives for their children despite overwhelming obstacles. I understood them in a way that made me better at my job. I knew what it felt like to be desperate, to be judged, to feel like the world was against you. And I knew what it felt like to find the strength to keep going anyway. That evening, I picked up Lily from after-school care, and we walked home hand in hand. She chattered about her day, about the book her teacher had read, about the new girl in class who had shared her cookies at snack time. She was so open, so trusting, so full of love. And she could be that way because I had made sure she was surrounded only by people who deserved her trust. Mama, she said as we walked, my friend Emma says her grandparents take her to the park every weekend. Do I have grandparents? My steps faltered, but I kept walking. This question had been coming for a while. Lily was getting older, more aware, starting to notice the gaps in our family structure. I had prepared for this moment, rehearsed different versions of this conversation in my head. "You did have grandparents," I said carefully, kneeling down to her level when we reached our building steps. "But they weren't very kind to us. Sometimes grown-ups make bad choices, and when they do, we have to protect ourselves by staying away from them. It doesn't mean anything is wrong with you. It means something was wrong with them." Lily thought about this, her little face serious. "Did they hurt you?" "Yes, baby, they hurt both of us." "Then I'm glad we don't see them," she said with the simple clarity of childhood. "I only want people who are nice to my mama." I pulled her into a hug, fighting back tears. This was why I had done everything. This was why the public exposure, the burned bridges, the permanent separation had all been worth it. Lily knew she was loved. She knew she was protected. She knew that I would always, always choose her. We went inside and made dinner together, and afterward we curled up on the couch to watch her favorite movie. My phone sat on the kitchen counter, silent for once. No angry messages, no guilt trips, no manipulation, just silence. And it was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. A week later, I was sorting through the mail when I found a cream-colored envelope with no return address. My hands shook slightly as I opened it, half expecting some new form of harassment from my family. Instead, I found a check for $50,000 and a short note in my father's handwriting. "Sarah, this is your inheritance given early. Consider all ties severed. Do not contact us again. We have moved forward with our lives, and we suggest you do the same." I stared at the check, at the cold, clinical way they had finally written me out of their lives completely. It was a payoff, a final transaction to ease their guilt and ensure I stayed away. They had reduced our entire relationship to a dollar amount, as if money could somehow balance out the decades of emotional neglect and cruelty. My first instinct was to tear it up, to send it back with a scathing letter about how I did not need their blood money. But then I looked at Lily's preschool artwork on the fridge, thought about the college fund I had barely been able to contribute to, thought about the security this money could provide. Pride was a luxury I could not always afford. I deposited the check and put every penny into a trust fund for Lily's education. I did not touch it for anything else, did not use it to make my own life easier. It was the only thing they had ever given me that had actual value, and I was going to make sure it benefited the granddaughter they had thrown away. There was a poetic justice in that, I thought. Their money would help build the future of the child they had tried to destroy. I wrote one final letter to them, short and to the point. "I accept this as full and final settlement of any obligation between us. You are correct that all ties are severed. I wish you well in your lives as long as those lives remain separate from mine and my daughter's. If you violate this boundary, I will not hesitate to take legal action. Consider this my promise and my warning." I sent it certified mail and waited for the confirmation that they had received it. When it came, I filed it away with all the other documentation I had kept. I was meticulous about protecting myself and Lily now. Every boundary was clearly defined, every consequence outlined. I had learned that people like my family only respected force, only understood firm walls. Months turned into a year, then two. Lily started elementary school, excelling in reading and art. She made friends easily, invited kids over for play dates, joined the school chorus. She was thriving in ways I had only dreamed of when I was her age. I watched her confidence grow, watched her laugh freely, watched her trust that the people around her would be kind. I dated occasionally, though nothing serious. The men I met were nice enough, but I had learned to be careful, to watch for red flags, to trust my instincts. I would not settle for someone who diminished me or dismissed Lily. We deserved better than that. And if better meant just the two of us for a while longer, that was fine too. One afternoon, I was at the grocery store when I saw my mother in the frozen foods aisle. She looked older, grayer, moving slowly like her body ached. She was alone, pushing a cart with just a few items in it. For a moment, we made eye contact, and I saw recognition flash across her face. She opened her mouth like she might say something, take a step toward me. I turned and walked away. Not angrily, not dramatically, just calmly and firmly. I heard her call my name once weakly, but I did not turn back. There was nothing left to say. No conversation would change the past or build a bridge I no longer wanted to cross. I finished my shopping on the other side of the store and left. In the car, my hands were shaking, and I had to sit for a few minutes before I felt steady enough to drive. Seeing her had brought back a flood of memories, both good and bad, but mostly just complicated. The mother I had wanted her to be, the mother she actually was, the unbridgeable gap between those two versions. I let myself feel sad about it for a few minutes, let myself grieve the relationship we had never had and never would have. Then I started the car and drove to pick up Lily from school. She came running out with a painting she had made, a picture of the two of us holding hands under a rainbow. "It's us. Mama, do you like it?" "I love it," I said, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. "It's perfect." That night, after Lily was asleep, I took out the box where I kept all the evidence from that terrible time. The text messages, the medical records, the drawings, the newspaper clippings from the scandal. I looked through it all one last time, remembering the fear and anger and desperation that had driven me to such dramatic action. I did not regret any of it. I had done what I needed to do to protect my child and establish boundaries that my family would actually respect. But I also did not need to carry it with me anymore. The past was the past. They were out of my life, and I was building something new and better. I took the box to the shredder and fed it through page by page, watching my old life turn into confetti. I kept only the legal documents establishing the boundaries and the trust fund papers. Everything else was destroyed, released, let go. When I was done, I felt lighter. The weight I had been carrying for so long, the anger and hurt and bitterness, had been transformed into something else. Not forgiveness exactly. They did not deserve that, and I did not owe it to them. But acceptance. Acceptance that they were who they were, that I could not change them, that the only person I could control was myself. And I had chosen to control my own destiny. I had chosen to be a mother who showed up, who protected, who loved unconditionally. I had chosen to break the cycle of conditional affection and emotional manipulation. I had chosen to build a family based on mutual respect and genuine care, rather than obligation and appearances. 3 years after that night by the trash cans, I was promoted to Director of Family Services at the nonprofit. It came with a significant raise, better benefits, and the opportunity to shape programs that would help even more families. I had found my calling in helping others navigate the same difficult choices I had faced, in showing them that leaving toxic situations was not selfish but necessary. Lily was thriving in 2nd grade, reading above her level, making art, constantly singing in the children's choir at the community center. She had friends who came over regularly, whose parents I had become close with. We had created our own chosen family, a network of support and love that was stronger than any blood tie. On the anniversary of that terrible night, I took Lily to the park. We sat on a bench together, eating ice cream and watching other kids play. She did not remember the details of what had happened that night anymore. Her therapist said that was normal, that young children often blocked out traumatic memories as a protective mechanism. All she knew was that we did not see certain people anymore because they had not been kind to us. "Mama," she said, licking chocolate ice cream off her fingers, "I'm really happy." "Yeah," I smiled at her. "Tell me what makes you happy." "You," she said simply, "and our home, and my friends, and my teacher, and ice cream." She grinned at the last one, and I laughed. "Those are all very good things," I agreed. "Are you happy, Mama?" I looked at my daughter, at her bright eyes and genuine smile, at the security and confidence radiating from her. I thought about the life we had built, the peace we had found, the freedom we had claimed. "Yes, baby, I'm very happy." And I was, not because everything was perfect or easy. Single parenting was still hard. Money was still tight sometimes. I still had moments of doubt and fear. But I was happy because I had learned the most important lesson of my life. I had learned that I was enough, that my love was enough, that protecting myself and my child was not just acceptable but necessary, that walking away from people who hurt you was not abandonment but survival. I had learned that revenge, real revenge, was not about destroying someone else. It was about refusing to let them destroy you. It was about taking back your power and using it to build something better. It was about proving through your own happiness and success that they were wrong about you. My family had called me weak, dramatic, overly sensitive, ungrateful. They had tried to convince me that I was the problem, that I was asking for too much, that I should accept their crumbs and be grateful. But I had proved them wrong. I had shown them, and more importantly shown myself, that I was strong enough to stand alone, capable enough to build a good life, worthy enough to demand respect and love. And the sun was starting to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Lily ran off to play on the swings one more time before we had to go home. I watched her, my heart full, knowing that I had given her the greatest gift I could offer. Not material things or social status or perfect grandparents, but the knowledge that she was loved unconditionally and fiercely, the assurance that I would always protect her, the example of a mother who knew her worth and refused to accept anything less than she deserved. As we walked home, hand in hand, Lily chattering about her plans for the weekend, I realized that this was the happy ending I had been searching for. Not reconciliation with people who had hurt me, not their apologies or recognition of their wrongs, just this peaceful, loving, secure life with my daughter, this chosen family and supportive community, this knowledge that I had broken free and built something beautiful from the ashes. Years from now, when Lily was older, I would tell her the full story. I would explain why we did not see my parents or Jessica. I would show her that sometimes loving yourself means walking away from people who cannot love you properly. I would teach her that she never has to settle for mistreatment, that she never has to earn love from people who should give it freely. But for now, in this moment, all she needed to know was that she was safe, she was loved, and she was home. We reached our apartment building, and Lily raced ahead to press the elevator button, something she always insisted on doing. As we rode up to our floor, I caught our reflection in the mirror. A tired but content mother and a happy, healthy child. Not a perfect picture, not a magazine cover family, just us, real and flawed and wonderful. And that was more than enough. That was everything.